Everyone, welcome to Power Lunch. We have a very special episode with James Walker, CEO at Frisch's Big Boy, an industry powerhouse leader at Nathan's Famous, Baja Fresh, Cinnabon, Subway, possibly a secret MI6 agent. Most likely, I don't know. He has like 15 passports when I met him last time. James Walker, how you doing, sir?
I'm great. I'm happy to be here. Power lunch, although it's not lunchtime and we're not having lunch.
Neither.
Tube socks, boy, about to pop the lunchbox. Tube socks, boy, about to
But listen, you know the James Corden videos where he is singing in the car with celebrities? They're not driving either. They're being dragged. They're sitting on top of a larger vehicle and they're pretending to drive. So it's all
right.
a fugazi, you know? So we are going to only do this from now during lunch, and we're going to bring in lunch from now. If we were having lunch, what would you eat?
That's why I'm comfortable. I'm super comfortable right now because, and I think you know this, I'm an intermittent faster. And
Once a day.
So I typically only eat once a day, and I subsist on a steady liquid diet of, coffee, Red Bull, and Diet Coke. So I've got my coffee, which would be my usual lunch.
I love it. Are you in New York right now?
I am not. I'm on my way to New York tomorrow because, and hopefully you know this, it's the Dune 2 premiere.
Yes.
To Manhattan tomorrow with a group of my friends, but I am in beautiful downtown Cincinnati right now, home of Frisch's Big Boy, as you mentioned.
Absolutely. And that cup looks very New York. That's why I asked if you're in New York, because that cup looks very New York deli or New York coffee.
Yeah, like it should have did I get a straight or a royal flush by looking at the bottom, right?
Absolutely. And also, Dune, the reviews have been bonkers. Like, I've not heard a more positive review from the film community, right? Like, the hype is real. I've heard it's the greatest thing in the world.
For me, it's these young actors who I like a lot. Timothée Chalamet, fantastic, Florence Pugh. But then you bring in Stellan Skarsgård, amazing, and the legend himself, Christopher Walken. So couldn't be more excited, going with a bunch of my friends that like those types of movies, and then a late dinner in Manhattan afterwards. Basically,
where are we going? We're going to Zizzi's?
I just went to Zizzi's, took my wife to Zizzi's, but no, we're staying with Major Food Group, which is a whole conversation, how amazing Major Food Group is in a time when people are talking about, are we in a recession or financial distress? It's hard to get people to go back into restaurants. And here's Major Food Group with all of these restaurants and all of them packed all the time. But we're going to the Grill. If I had to pick a favorite restaurant, Grill certainly would be a contender.
The Grill is great, and I love the Grill because it's in Midtown and I live right above it, so it's my go-to location. So
you live right above it. That explains the foot stamping I hear sometimes when I'm in the Grill, I guess.
I meant on 61st, but yes, if I was above it too, I would be the loud neighbor. James, I can't believe I didn't ask you this when we've hung out, and I've been fortunate enough to hang out with you for a couple of times now, and a couple of times over meals too, and you're a great host. Even though we're in New York, you do the hosting usually. What did you want to do when you were growing up? Like a kid, James as a kid, what did you want to be?
Yeah. So I think, when I started realizing that there were careers and some were better than others, I really liked architecture. So there was a period of time when I was younger, when I wanted to be an architect and really enjoyed that. And then in my mid to later teens, I'm stretching out that teen period of time. I just loved music so much and, came to the realization that I was, super passionate about music, but absolutely had no talent and no voice. And that's why I'm really happy we're not doing the James Croydon Let's Sing thing. So, I went into the business. No, it maybe with auto-tune. We could do a little auto-tune, I think. But the business side of the music industry, in particular, the international piece, which still, even in the restaurant business, gravitate to kind of the international side of things.
Yeah, you've been at so many incredible brands, Nathan's, Baja Fresh, Cinnabon, Subway. You've been at so many different brands. Looking back, it just seems like you picked all these incredible logos and had the most amazing experience as a leader, building the perfect resume. That's what it looks like looking back. If you take us to your early career, how were you able to achieve this? Tell us a little bit about the journey from a young James to today.
I went from the music business, which I absolutely loved, and kind of got out of that at the right time, and went into the back of the house restaurant side, started in a restaurant as a manager and learned that there were lots of different levers you could pull from a profitability standpoint. I think I may have told you the story of, wait a minute, you can buy a blueberry muffin for $1 and you can sell it for $2 and it's okay. Or you can make a blueberry muffin and it costs you a quarter and it's worth $3. And that just really resonated with me. But my initial career back in the 90s was really back of the house on a culinary side. And back then, there weren't as many opportunities for young chefs like today. You can work in a cruise line, you can work at a hotel, there's restaurants, there's TV shows, all of those types of opportunities. There really weren't. And with the young family, going the corporate route seemed a lot safer for the family, and it allowed me to stay in the restaurant business. So began working my way up, as most people do, as a general manager. One of the things that I love about the restaurant business when I started and still love today is you can get pretty far in the restaurant business if you're a hard worker. And, I'm not particularly bright or talented, as my lack of musical aptitude would attest, but I was a hard worker. I showed up early in the morning, I stayed late, and that kind of propelled my career to kind of where it's got to today.
That's incredible. You were the VP of North America for Subway, 28,000 restaurant, and now you're at Frisch's, which is, in comparison, a smaller system. What's similar about managing two very different brands? What's similar versus what's different? Would love to hear your take there. Like, some things never change and some things are very different.
Yeah, I think, I've been fortunate enough to work in some of these very iconic brands. So brands like Nathan's Famous and Frisch's and Subway. I think what's the same is it's important to make sure you understand the culture of the organization, what really works, and how consumers view those brands, and that you're very careful and delicate with decision making that may interrupt that. I think certainly those of us who've gone to business school or those of us who've worked in private equity, there's an inclination to come in and look at an organization and quickly say, I found a list of things that I think can be better, or that the organization can do better. And I've learned over a period of time that while certainly there's an opportunity to look at an organization and say, these are things that they're not doing that they should do, kind of the stop, start, and continue, it's probably most important, and you're going to be most successful in older entrenched brands in trying to learn what they do well and putting more horsepower behind that. And I think that's the commonality amongst some of those legacy brands. What's different is I would say each brand has its own nuance, and it's important to understand those nuances, that something that absolutely worked for me at Nathan's wouldn't work and didn't work at Frisch's. It's a different customer in a different part of the United States. The Eastern Seaboard, where Nathan's is so iconic and so strong, that's a very different customer than you would find in Ohio. And then when you talk about Subway, one of the things that's great in Subway is when you go to business school, you get these problems and exercises and case studies, and they have lots of zeros. And then you go out and you get your first job, and there's not quite so many zeros behind what you're doing. And Subway was one of those jobs where, there were lots of zeros. And that was really fun, I think, from an academic standpoint. Really interesting to look at the scale of an organization like that.
That's incredible, and especially to do it at scale and then come in and help someone like Frisch's, which is a brand that is just about to have their 77th anniversary, if not already did. That's a very different brand, a brand with a lot of culture and a lot of history. What drew you to say, I'm going to go and make up my next mark at Frisch's?
Yeah, I think kind of two buckets. First of all, the ownership group falls under NRD Capital, whose chairman is Aziz Hashim. Aziz is someone I've known for over 20 years and really wanted an opportunity to work for and with Aziz. And, Aziz has probably the IRR of all IRRs. He's just fantastic at finding ways to return investment back to his shareholders and his investors. He's very creative in how he does it. He's very ethical. He's very honest. He worries about stakeholders, franchisees, franchise owners, his employees. And I wanted to be in a position where I could learn from him, because I think there's a lot of things he does that are very unique. And with my background, I certainly understand the textbook ways of looking at things. Aziz probably threw away that textbook and wrote his own. So that was super attractive to me, to be part of an organization that ultimately he was at the helm of. Frisch's specifically, one of the things I've learned in my career is I have to enjoy a brand as a consumer. And otherwise it doesn't work for me. And I'll be honest, that's not hubris on my part. I actually admire those individuals who can just step into any role and it's widget, it's a mathematical problem. That doesn't work for me. If I don't enjoy a brand as a customer, it's really hard for me to enjoy my job as a leader. And Frisch's as a brand, and Big Boy as kind of a macro organization that I grew up on, I enjoyed. I love the history. Some of the factoids within Frisch's, there's another very large organization out of, let's call it Illinois, greater Chicago area, that has really taken a lot of cues from Frisch's, and people may not know this. The triple-decker burger was an iconic Frisch's item that was copied by a larger hamburger-centric chain, also based in North America. That organization also created a fish sandwich that's very iconic for them to counteract how successful Frisch's was with their own seafood program and their own Lent program. So, Frisch is not only a brand that I like as a consumer, but I love the history of the restaurant business and brands like Frisch's and what they've done and how they've survived for so long.
Yeah. I believe you when you say I have to connect with the brand and the food, because if anyone's dined with you or enjoyed hospitality with you, you're so focused on that part. And as an outsider looking at it, really makes sense that you really need to connect with the brand. All CEOs have something they lean a little bit more towards. You have a magnetic pull towards the culinary side and building the concept. Built two brands within the Experiential Brands. You have the original hot chicken and the ink tacos. Tell me about why you decided to build those brands, and was that for yourself, or was that to stay busy, have fun, eat some good tacos, get some good burgers? Talk us through the process of building those two brands.
Yeah, so actually we're within Experiential Brands. We now have 4 brands. I'm going to tell you how I see things, right? They talk about you should try to see things through others' eyes. Through my own eyes, what I'm passionate about is customer experience. Within the customer experience, within the restaurant business, certainly if you're quick casual or fast food, food is such a huge component of that. Now, if we were having a conversation, like we're talking about major food group, and you're talking about fine dining, you would hear me be just as passionate about the glassware they're using in their bar program or in their wine program, the decanters they have. I could talk about that stuff for hours. But when we're talking about Experiential Brands, which really lives in, certainly from a food standpoint, the polished, quick, casual, genre within the restaurant business, Experiential Brands is a holding company, a portfolio company started by Aziz Hashim a number of years ago. And really the goal today, and it's a very profound and pronounced goal, something that we talk about all the time, is to have a portfolio of franchisable brands that provide really fantastic food at affordable prices from a B2C standpoint, but from a B2B standpoint, provide return on invested capital back to franchisees. So when you think of Aziz and myself, and to be clear, this is his vision that I am very fortunate that he's allowing me to help a little bit with this vision he has. He is very passionate on the returning that invested capital back to franchisees. And the way we do that is by providing just a fantastic customer experience. And within that customer experience, certainly food gets the spotlight. So those 4 brands, you mentioned 2 of them, Original Hot Chicken, Ink Tacos, but we also have Pinza Roman Pizza, and our newest brand, and a brand that is probably only the second time in my career I would say a brand has lightning in a bottle. Our newest brand is Flametown Burgers. Our logo is a blue flame. There's a story behind it, but I would argue it's almost the flame behind a rocket. This is a brand that is going to grow very, very quickly. If anybody goes to my LinkedIn page, which my
You have the
LinkedIn-
worst LinkedIn ever, by the way,
Okay.
because most people pretend to be more on LinkedIn. Everything you've done, you have like 10% of it on LinkedIn. So you're one of the few people, if not the only person I know, who's doing the opposite of what they're supposed to on LinkedIn. But I digress. Sorry, go ahead. What were you
No,
saying about
that's, I will tell you, I am somebody like, if I'm going to go meet somebody for the first time, I go to their LinkedIn and I try to see, did they go to Duke or did they go to UNC? Because I need to understand where that
there's a
whole
rivalry.
dynamic's going to be. And
Understood.
obviously I'm a
Yeah.
Duke guy, got the Duke
Yeah.
ring on. But
Yes.
I also look at their photo because, I want to be able to greet them. The customer experience to me, there's things within my business relationships. I really do try to learn people's birthdays and where they went to school. And I try to keep my LinkedIn headshot up to date so somebody can say, oh yeah, that's look like that guy. But if you go next to my headshot, to the right of it, there's a black screen and it says memorable, craveable, Instagrammable, operational, and profitable. So, when you look at the food, I hope what you'll take away, especially if you're looking at Flametown Burger, our newest brand, I'm somebody who's very passionate about food photography. This is the first brand where we made a conscious decision not to use professional photography. So if you're looking at the Flametown Burgers website or the menu boards or the social media posts, none of that is done by a professional photographer or a food stylist. That is how the food looks. And I think that's very unique in this day and age when, you have AI and you don't know what's real or what's not real. Is that really a politician who said that? Or is that really a famous celebrity who's endorsing, some new product? And here's a brand that basically says, listen, all of these photos were shot with an iPhone. They're not styled. That's really how the food looks. It's just built and the recipes are designed that the food looks Instagrammable. That's how it comes out.
I mean, listen, I've gone to your website, your personal website, and the photography is nuts. And I was shocked when you told me that all those photos were taken via your iPhone. So, food stylist, if you might be able to moonlight. Although one would argue you should not moonlight any more than the 20 jobs you already have, sir.
Yeah, my wife, she's a great support person because she has her pulse on what's going on in the restaurant industry and pop culture. And she's somebody who I really value her feedback. I'm somebody who I don't like to listen to my podcast. So, somebody will send me a link and say, oh, listen to your podcast. And I'm like, oh, but Sarah,
There's something
my wife,
terrible about listening to your own voice. Something terrible
I
about it.
absolutely think so.
Yeah.
But she'll listen and she'll provide feedback. Like, she's just, stop telling people who interview you that that's a really good question. And I'm like, oh, okay. But what if it is a good question? Or what if she's like, you tell everyone who interviews you, that's a good question. So, I'll try not, if you have a good question, I'll say, well, that was very insightful. I'll think of something else to say.
You haven't said it once this podcast, so whatever she's doing is working. Okay,
Yeah.
it's working.
Well, and maybe you just had good questions. No, you've had very insightful, poignant questions.
Hey, so you're on the road. Half the year you're on the road? More than that? I think it's much more. How often are you on the road?
I would say I'm on the road as much as I need to be. I have an office at home and I have good technology. And I think there's a lot of things today that you can get done that way. Obviously, these brands will have a delivery only component. I didn't say virtual. These are not virtual brands. Other people have virtual brands. We have real brands. In some cases, they execute through a delivery only platform dealing with the DSP. So if you're dealing with, Uber Eats or Deliveroo or DoorDash, those teams are way more comfortable dealing, through Zoom or that type of technology. And when I show up at their office, it's almost off-putting. They're like, he's here, he's in person. So there are some things that do work really well with telepresence. And then there are other things like if you're trying to better the customer experience, you have to be there. I have to feel the coffee cup, try the forks, make sure the condiments are right. Here in Cincinnati today, we have launched, as of this morning, just this morning, we launched 21 Flametown Burger delivery restaurants. That's a big deal. And that's actually not why I'm here. I'm here for a series of meetings in the morning with other potential Flametown partners and Original Hot Chicken partners. But being here on a day when 21 delivery restaurants were launched through our partnership with Franklin Junction, I will be embarrassed to tell you how many orders I have placed today, because there are some things you just have to do in person. I want to open the bag and try the food. Were they built correctly? Are they memorable, craveable, Instagrammable? Are there opportunities? And providing that feedback to the operations team. That's really hard to do with me sitting in Easton, Connecticut, staring at a screen. It's a lot easier for me to do in person. So to answer your question, I'm on the road, or I travel as much as I think will push the business and will generate a return on the cost of my travel.
How do you do it? How do you, every time I'm talking to you, you're flying in from Dubai or UK or New York. I've never seen you in the same city for more than 48 hours. I've accused you of being a spy for the MI6 or for someone, but
Sure.
You're always on the road. And how do you balance it? How do you take care of yourself? How do you have this incredible balance you have besides having an incredible wife?
Yeah, I think incredible wife and technology. So the US is a huge country. I can go from New York to London now on JetBlue in less time, and frankly, for less money than I can go from New York to LA. So even if you're working across the domestic US, 20 years ago, most companies said you're allowed one phone call a day home, right? That's what they paid for. And you got in your hotel room and it was 9:30 at night and you called home. And if you were in LA and your family's on the East Coast, it's past midnight and you got 15 minutes. Now, my wife and I are in communication constantly. What's happening at home, so I feel connected. I would say technology does make travel and kind of working outside of the home a lot easier. Other things, I am a routinized person, so I try to sit in the same seat on the plane. I try, if it's economically feasible, to use the same hotels, to use the same airlines, so that there's some comfort level, and also that it's no longer top of mind for me. I don't have to worry about where I'm going to go or where I'm going to stay. If I'm in London, I stay at the same hotel. If I'm in Dubai, I've stayed at that hotel since it's opened, and they tend to hold on to their employees. So Sanjay at the Marriott Marquis in Dubai, he knows I'm coming in. I get to my room, there's Red Bull and Diet Coke, sugar-free Red Bull and
So
Diet
funny.
Coke. So, there are some things. I think, watching what you eat, for me, fasting really helps. I have a slow metabolism. So, I don't eat in a way that would cause me issues. And I really try to do 5 kilometers a day. I feel guilty if I don't make up for it. If I miss a day, I'll do 7.5 kilometers the next day and 7.5 the following day to make up for it. And the other thing, the biggest advice I have for people who aren't used to multiple time zones is the minute you get on the plane, you sleep on the time zone you're going to, not the time zone you're leaving. And if that means, you've got to get up really early. So if I'm going abroad, I might get up at 2 a.m. so that when I get on the plane, even if it's 6 o'clock, it's probably 11:30 or midnight where I'm going. I go to sleep on the time zone I'm landing in. So when I land, I am immediately acclimatized to that new time zone.
I think that these are really, really helpful advice. I gotta ask you one more question. So you received this incredible award from President Obama, the President's E Award.
Yes.
What is this? And also, how awesome is that? But more importantly, what is this award? Would love to hear a little bit about it. I thought it was amazing as we're doing our research.
It's an award for furthering U.S. businesses abroad. And it's basically through the U.S. Commercial Service, which I've worked directly with for, about 25 years now. For anybody who is trying to take their businesses abroad, it is a fantastic, very economical resource for you to tap into. And really, through my work with them, I was put up for this award and ultimately received it. It was a great honor and, definitely something that I'm excited about. But, back when I was traveling a great deal example, primarily for Johnny Rockets, visas were not what they are today. So like if you're going to Saudi Arabia, it's like $25 US, 3 mouse clicks, and you've got like a 10-year visa. Back 15, 20 years ago, when I was going to Brazil and China and Saudi Arabia a great amount, you had to get visas and they took your passport. You gave them your passport and they're like, yeah, we'll send it back to you in, a month. So I had 3 active passports, which was your comment, having all these passports. And I had a very special passport that any modifications to passports have to be approved by the President of the United States. So I have this like crazy thick, it looks like a dictionary passport because they sewed in so many additional pages as my main passport because I had, lots of visas and stamps and what have you. And you talk about the espionage thing. I was going through immigration in London, just like a month and a half ago, and was stopped, and the customs agent or immigration agent there is like, what's with this passport? And I said, well, I traveled a lot and this is my main passport, and they don't do it anymore now. They just ask you to get a new passport. But they gave me this passport. And she goes, well, who gave it to you? And I said, well, the US government. She's like, but who specifically? And I said, well, actually, if you look, it says any modifications have to be approved by the president. And she did not like that answer at all. And
it doesn't sound real. It is awesome. It is too awesome. It doesn't sound real. I get it.
Well, and I'm sure, like if you're the president, what does that mean? I mean, I'm sure they don't want, I'm sorry, President Obama, I know you're really busy and there's a lot of crises around the world and the economy. But, James Walker would really like to get 12 more pages in his passport. Are you okay with that? And he takes out a stamp and, some tape. I'm sure that's not what happens. I'm sure there's 1,000 passports and everybody wants pages, and I don't know, he gestures or something. So it's probably not quite as cool or romantic. And I probably just, should have said, secretary at the passport office, but that's not what it says in your passport. So
yeah,
I give less information.
I love that story. And James, you live such an amazing life, not just professionally, but also, around the world, and tell so many incredible stories through food. I've always enjoyed hanging out with you for a few times we have. And thank you always for being so generous with your time. That was epic. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you.
Absolutely. My pleasure. And you had lots of great questions.
Thank you. Thank you. We got through only 10% of them because you've lived a life too awesome for it to be fit into a quick bite-sized podcast. So this format is not for you, sir. We're going to remove this format for folks like you moving forward.
For old guys who can't answer succinctly.
Your words, not mine, and also not true. Not true at all. Just epic life, and it requires an epic format.
Very kind of you. I would say, I'm very lucky to have met a lot of really fascinating people and, got to peek under the hood of a lot of things that others haven't been afforded that opportunity. So I consider myself very lucky. Sometimes people are like, they don't know how lucky they are. I absolutely feel that I have been very lucky, very fortunate, and have received more than my due from my life already. So thank you.
Thank you for saying that. And I think a lot of us are living vicariously through you. So continue.
As I like to say, challenge accepted.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much, James.
All right, my friend.
Wants to fly with me. Tube socks, boy, about to pop the lunchbox. Tube socks, boy.